Maybe you've heard of the website Etsy. It's an online marketplace where people buy quaint homemade goods, jams, jellies, quilts, all kinds of homemade items. But what you might not know about Etsy is it is now a place that has developed a full-blown cottage industry for selling magical spells to witches. What should we think about this biblically? The Wall Street Journal recently wrote an article describing the spells and witchcraft materials that have become available on the online marketplace Etsy. These spells typically cost anywhere between $7 and $250, obviously no refunds accepted, but Etsy shoppers are buying those magical spells to secure everything from a career breakthrough or a spirit cleanser to pleasant weather on their wedding day or bringing back their ex-partner. The trend is another contemporary expression of the revived interest in what we used to call New Age spirituality, what is more appropriately today called Wiccan paganism. Generation Z seems to be particularly consumed with this. One report says that over 60% of 14 to 29-year-olds read their horoscope on a daily basis. 40% of those people claim the zodiac helps them make decisions. In 2017, astrology was a $2 billion a year industry. By this year, that same number has risen to over $12 billion. Projections estimate that occult practices, horoscopes, astrology, other kinds of behaviors, by the year 2031 will be a gross annual expenditure of more than $22 billion. Today, on TikTok, there is a hashtag called #WitchTalk. WitchTalk has more than 55 billion views. There's a writer by the name of Tara Isabella Burton who wrote a book in 2010 entitled Strange Rites, New Religions for a Godless World. She writes that occultism has become, quote, the de facto religion of millennial progressives. Well, that's disturbing enough, but what's disturbing to me even more so is as we dive into the statistics, the survey of those who are actually participating in new, updated social media trendy versions of occultic practices, we find that within those who self-identify as Christians, 61% of American Christians believe in at least one uniquely New Age doctrine. For example, just within the specific niche of evangelicals, we're told that 33% of evangelicals believe in psychics. 19% of evangelicals believe in reincarnation. 18% of evangelicals believe in astrology. Essentially, 1 in 5 believe that the stars dictate your destiny and that you will be reincarnated to come back in a different life. 1 out of 3 believe that psychics can reach to the other world and help you communicate with those who have already gone on. How do we approach this? I would say, by the way, that those numbers are lower among evangelicals than every other branch of Christianity. Evangelicals believe at least one of those items at the rate of 47%, while mainline Christians believe in Wiccan and New Age spirituality at the rate of 67%. Catholics typically hold those views at 70%. This is a level of syncretism, a merging of paganism and biblical Christianity at historic levels that prepares us, I think, for the fulfillment of last days prophecies, where we are told that the grasping for control and the pursuit of knowledge that does not belong to us will become prevalent. It's interesting. Social media is the buffet of occultic practices. There is a hashtag Witchcraft that has 9 million results. Hashtag Witches of Instagram yields more than 10 million results, teaching everything from moon rituals to herbal potions, all designed to give the user some semblance of supernatural control of their circumstances and their future. There are 8 million posts currently appearing under the tag hashtag Witch Talk, and TikTok is a place where Gen Z is mainstreaming these very out of the ordinary, even bizarre practices, with influencers modeling this with elaborate stories of all the wonderful things that happened when they asserted in their mind a control of the universe through the dark arts of magic. The New York Times, hardly a conservative bastion of information, has reported that astronomy is, quote, having a pop culture renaissance. Now, if you're not in Gen Z, if you're not a regular viewer of material on TikTok or Instagram, this may all be news to you. You're probably oblivious to the expansive and rapidly increasing influence of occultic practices within American culture. And yet, we need to understand that these things are happening because we have to learn how to think biblically about the culture around us. We need to be aware of the trends that are dominating essentially entire generations and the way they approach themselves and the way they live their lives. On this side of our essentially secular age, we're stunned sometimes as a culture to discover that humanity's impulse to worship never went away. We became secular, we poo-pooed religion, we ridiculed Christianity, we decided that we would live for our own lives by our own rules. We used language like our own truth. And yet, what we've discovered is we can't quite get away from this hardwired impulse that is in all of us to worship something greater than ourselves. You see, because man was created in the image of God, there is a connection to the divine that was damaged by sin, that has separated us from relationship with God. But even when we deny God, even when we claim to be atheists and reject the very possibility of God, there is an undeniable pull, a draw within us toward something else. There's a church in Dallas, Texas today that bills itself as a church for atheists. Now, if that sounds like an oxymoron, it is. But when you study this church, they come together on Sunday mornings and they sing songs, usually kind of hippie folk songs from the 1960s. They give lectures to each other on how to live a self-fulfilled life, and they encourage each other with their version of fellowship and doing life together. What they don't realize is they're attempting to replicate this natural draw to God without admitting that God exists. So they have reclaimed the trappings, the activities, the behaviors of worship. They just don't have anybody other than themselves to actually express that worship toward. And yet the lesson here is, deny it all we want, we are created to worship. It is the natural expression of being formed and shaped in the image of God? Well, because the spiritual self can be suppressed, but the drive to connect with a larger reality, to situate ourselves within a broader narrative, to understand that we're a part of something bigger, we're not truly alone in the universe, because that impulse persists, try as they might, Gen Z cannot eradicate that inward pull toward religious practice. So, since they can't eliminate it, they redirect it. They focus it on essentially asserting themselves as the maker of the rules, the sovereign in their lives, the captain of their own fate, the king of their own world. Part of Etsy's witch appeal is the hope of having control. New Age and Wiccan practices claim followers have power to change their lives and, quote, shape their world. They use rituals and magical energy. It's far from coincidental that a generation drawn to casting spells, reading horoscopes, and carrying crystals is also the most anxious and depressed generation in U.S. history. Combine widespread mental health maladies, post-Christian secularism, and a live your truth mindset, and a resurgence of the occult makes perfect sense. The dominant influence of excessive individualism means that questions of meaning in life and direction are entirely up to you. Your feelings are your ultimate source of truth. The problem is, eventually you discover that your feelings don't provide the truth that you so desperately crave. A spirituality that presents the self as the object around which the universe revolves, for whom the forces of nature are manipulated and by whom human will is changed, seems perfectly fine-tuned to fit our cultural moment. Well, what does the Bible have to say about all this? Well, in reality, Ecclesiastes 1:9 is absolutely true when it tells us that there's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing fresh or innovative or creative about this. Humanity has been here many times before. It is a natural cyclical pull back into magic as a means to be God because we refuse to acknowledge God. There is a natural built-in, because of our sin, a natural built-in proclivity toward idolatry. Isaiah chapter 44, verses 9 through 20, give us a long explanation of mankind's fall into idolatry as a normal place for the unredeemed mind to go. The deception that you will be like God, that started in Genesis chapter 3 with the temptation from the enemy who suggested that they were just one self-chosen rebellious act away from being just like God. Pursuing the illusion of control, Zechariah chapter 10 verse 2 tells us that that has always been a temptation, a draw. We want to be in charge of our universe. Worshiping the creation rather than the Creator. Paul talks about that in Romans chapter 1, verses 21 to 23. You see, when we become the standard by which all truth is measured, we forfeit the acknowledgement of a Creator, and we turn the created, including ourselves, into objects of worship. And yet they are objects of worship that inevitably and forever prove to be disappointing. Deuteronomy chapter 18 has Moses warning the people of Israel that they will have a perpetual temptation to dabble in the demonic. And he tells them what a danger it is. It must be, we must be alert to it. We must be aware of it so that we can stop it before it gives full-blown blossom growth to a pact with the devil. We're told in Ephesians chapter 6, the Apostle Paul tells us that we don't contend with flesh and blood, but instead with the principalities, the powers, and the rulers of spiritual darkness. And spiritual darkness is precisely what a generation of horoscope reading, crystal carrying, Etsy witch consulting, spiritual but not religious, post-Christian Americans are held prisoner by. Technology, no matter how advanced it is, no matter how socially evolved we declare ourselves to be, the reality is the witches of Etsy prove that the human condition has not changed in all of the years of human history. We are in spiritual bondage to an enemy who plays with us and lies to us, telling us that we can be God if we only assert our determination to do so. In fact, we will stay in bondage to that lie until, as John tells us in chapter 8 of his gospel, until we find the truth that sets us free. Don't treat spells, magical incantations, horoscope, psychics, and other New Age occultic practices. Don't treat them like they're quaint little practices to be laughed off. Challenge them where you find them. These are gateway drugs to hell. Let us stand firm on the truth of God's Word, on the reality of our accountability before our Creator, and let us share with a generation starving for significance where they can find true healing, real meaning, and a future and a destiny and an eternity in the presence of God. This is Truth Currents.